So I've been reading a lot of Carl Jung recently, and I find most of his stuff extremely fascinating, to say the least. Especially his ideas on synchronicity and the collective unconscious. Now, for those who are not aware, synchronicity, according to Jung, is the experience of two or more events that are apparently causally unrelated or unlikely to occur together by chance, that are observed to occur together in a meaningful manner. So basically, it's when several coincidences kind of happen together at the same time in an apparently meaningful manner. Now, I would say that throughout most of my life, I have had a lot of specifically these types of synchronicity, especially these types of experiences. And I just want to talk about one which happened to me a few months ago, which I thought was particularly interesting. I was at work, and or one of my works, and it's at a school, a primary school, and in the morning we were actually, the kids were making like paper windmills. Those little windmills that you blow into them and spin around and all that fancy stuff. And so that's what we were making with the kids in the morning. And then at lunchtime, I went to drive to go to the shop, and I must drive down this particular road to the shop every day. I've driven down this particular road hundreds of times, and for some reason on that particular day, my attention was drawn to this particular house on the left, which, as I said, I've driven past hundreds of times, and for some reason, this particular house on this particular day caught my attention, and above the actual door on the house was a sign saying "Windmill Farm." So at the time, I thought, oh, that's a bit strange that I've driven past this house so many times, and this is the first time I've noticed that it's called Windmill Farm, or the first time that I've consciously noticed that it's called Windmill Farm. And so I suppose you could say that's the first synchronicity of that day, and I thought that was a bit strange. And then later on in that day, I was with some of my mates going to watch Inception, the film, and on the way to the cinema, one of my friends started talking about windmills. I can't quite remember how she got onto the topic of windmills, but we weren't talking about the film, and I hadn't at that time mentioned anything about my previous two windmill synchronicities that had happened during that day. And so that was the third synchronicity. And also at this point, I told all of my friends what had happened that day. That was the third time that this sort of windmill coincidence had occurred. And so we went to watch Inception, and it's also important for me to say that at this time I didn't know what Inception was about. I had no idea. The only thing I knew is that it was something to do with lucid dreaming, which is what made me want to go and see it. And so I didn't know anything about what actually happens in the film. And then towards the end of the film, when the guy, I can't remember his name, um, he goes into the safe at the end, and he pulls out of the safe a paper windmill, which is exactly the same windmill which I was making earlier on in the day with the kids at school. So that was the fourth um, kind of coincidence which occurred in an apparently meaningful way. And when this happened, me and my friend just looked at each other and said, "Wow!" And he was trying to, he was thinking, and we were having a discussion about what the meaning of this could be, and what it could, whether it is just a coincidence, or whether there's something collective, or something in the collective unconscious taking place here. And so that's just one example of sort of the synchronicity that I have. But as I said, I've had these kind of experiences for years, and most of the time that they happen is they don't seem to be apparently very meaningful. There isn't a kind of any meaning. I can't find a meaning with them. Like, for example, with the windmill events that happened to me, I can't find a meaning behind them. I mean, people like Carl Jung would probably suggest that there is some sort of meaning in them, but I personally, I couldn't find, or I couldn't derive any kind of meaning from them. And the same goes for all of the coincidences which have occurred to me in the past, all these synchronicities which have happened before. I can't find a particular meaning for them. Now, I also understand that scientists will say that if there's a 1 in a million chance of something happening, then it's going to happen at some point. And I think I read somewhere recently, I can't remember what law it was, that said that we have something like 10,000 different experiences per day. I'm not entirely sure what they mean by experiences there, but these, so obviously when you add all these up per month or per year, that's a hell of a lot of experiences. And if there is a 1 in a million chance of two extremely unlikely coincidences occurring at the same time, then it's bound to happen. Probability will dictate that it's bound to occur to us several times a year at least. But the thing that I want to kind of stress here really is that, for me anyway, these synchronicities and these experiences have occurred a lot. And I mean, I remember when I was like sort of 13, 14, 15, these coincidences or extreme coincidences seem to happen to me about 20 times a day, 20, maybe 25 times a day. And they haven't actually happened to me for a few years really, apart from a couple of times over the past few weeks, and obviously this windmill incident that occurred to me. So yeah, it's just I'm going to look into these sorts of things a lot more, because it's something that, as I said, I have a lot of experience with these types of synchronicities, and I'd be really interested to find out if anyone else can provide any examples that they have had from their own personal experience of these types of synchronistic events.